Hey everybody, how are you? I'm laughing because I'm reading comments already. Okay, we've got some people hanging around already, which is cool. Let's see. Meryl's in the house. Hi, Meryl. Jason. Good to see you, Jason. And Bob had so much fun last week that he came back this week. Bob's a busy man, but he tries to make it. Um, we also had some shout outs for my guest, because he and I have a lot of mutual friends. So Jay had said hello, and Greg, who's a total hoot, Greg Hudson, had said send my regards to Ken. And then our mutual friend John said same with me.
What's that funny banner next to his name?
So let's see. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, maybe we'll come back to that.
All right, so Teresa is saying hello from Missouri. Hey Teresa, good to see you here. And so Dara, I had a whole conversation about that last week in the pre-show, because the following week, the previous week, the last episode of season 2, the day before the show, I chopped off my hair, and it hasn't been this short in 28 years, and no one noticed. Like 0 people noticed, including my guest who has short hair. So my husband said they were probably just didn't want to say anything. Okay, so Ramesh is saying happy to be back, and hello to Ken as well. We have a lot of mutual friends, so this is going to be fun. All right, so the question of today is, what is your favorite part of your legal tech journey? So it's a question that I'm asking Ken today, and he's going to tell me for each position what his favorite part was and is. So I was wondering if I could ask you guys the same question. When you think back on your career in legal tech, which is what this show is about, what is your favorite part of your journey? Go ahead and let me know in the comments. Thank you, Dara. Appreciate it. Dara, I'm putting on the screen so you guys know what I'm saying. So Dara, I was literally shaking in the chair because I don't get my hair cut. So it just sits there long, for years and years. All right, so while you guys are answering the question of the day, I do want to do a shout out to Deborah from Legal Office Guru. Some of you may have heard of Deborah. She's been around a long time in our industry, but she teaches and tries to help people with technology in the legal world, and she has a lot of quality instructional videos. Like, she does a really good job of breaking it down and sharing what she knows, sharing her knowledge. So she just happened to send an email to her audience right after my show last week, which had Anna from Pacer Pro on it, and she was encouraging people to watch that episode. But she also talked about my Fast Tip Friday videos. And like many of my friends, she said it's not just litigation support. There's tips in there for everybody. So I just want to give a shout out to you, Deborah. I really appreciate you mentioning me. And a bunch of people subscribed to my site yesterday morning. Like, I had this flood of people, and I was like, I need to find out who to thank for that, because, it's always somebody mentioning me. So, all right, so let's see what we have. Kathleen saying hello. Hello, Kathleen. All right, so nobody's answering the question of the day. The question of the day is, and I know some of you it doesn't apply to it, but what is your favorite part of your legal tech journey? So for those of you it does apply to, let me know. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started because I'm really excited to share Ken with you. So let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome to the Legal Tech. I can't even talk. I have to talk for my show. Welcome to the Legal Tech Mastery Show. My name is Amy Bowser-Rollins, and I'm really excited to have you here today to share with you one of my closest friends, Ken. Let's bring Ken on now. Ken, say hello.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so we're gonna go through Ken's journey. It's he's not as old as I am, so it's not as long as mine, but we're gonna go through his journey, and I think you're gonna get a kick out of some of his antidotes. So Ken, let's start with how you landed in legal, because I know you have a good story for that.
Yeah, it's true. I was driving a delivery truck, locally here in Washington, and really struggling to make ends meet. It was a daily grind every day. And one day when I came home from the end of the day at work, I looked at a copy of Time magazine. And it had an article about paralegaling and that it would be the job of the future. And I started thinking, gosh, this has got to be a lot better than everything I'm doing now. Why don't I give it a try? So I ended up I talked to a bunch of mentors, and I applied to some different schools, and I ended up going to a paralegal school in Philadelphia. And after a period of time, it was called the Philadelphia Institute. It's not there right now, but during the 90s, it was pretty popular, and a number of our colleagues have gone through the program. There weren't a ton of programs like that back then, but at any rate, I made it through, and when I finally got back to Washington, I started trying to find a job. And in those days, the economy was not fantastic, and I really had a lot of trouble. I didn't have any paralegaling experience, and back then, believe it or not, there weren't a ton of male paralegals.
I believe that even today. That's true today.
And a lot of paralegals were people that were planning on going to law school and only worked at the firm as clerks for maybe a year or so before they went out to law school. So the idea of a career paralegal was pretty new, yet that's what I was trying to do. But as I said, I had a really hard time finding a job and ended up getting a temp job at Crowell & Moring, pretty much pushing the mail around on a cart and delivering it to the partners on this one big case. And
in office services, what we call office services.
There was an office services team there at Crowell. I wasn't on that team. We had one case that received a tremendous amount of correspondence every single day, and so I worked under another paralegal just dealing with the mail for that one case.
Oh, wow.
And organizing it and distributing it to everybody. And that was my start in the business.
Okay, and then, so Ramesh was remarking that I don't know if you saw that, glad to see you, Ken, younger by years.
Yeah.
Bob is answering the question of the day. I've been pulling attorneys through the knothole and into the world of computers since the 80s. Frustrating but rewarding. I agree, Bob. Much more fun teaching paralegals who are not as resistant as attorneys. Bob also teaches in a paralegal program. That's how I met him.
Well, great.
And Paula's saying hi. Hi, Paula. Good to see you again. Okay,
Hello.
so Crowell & Moring, you eventually became a litigation support specialist. That was the title?
Right. I started out as, finally, after being a temp, I got a real paralegal job, and I did that for 5 or 6 years probably, and I loved it. I learned so much from it. It was a great experience. The biggest takeaway for me from that whole period in my career was the importance of perseverance, because I had gone to school to be a paralegal and I'd gotten a temp job at this firm, but I couldn't quite break into a full-time job with benefits and everything. Yep. And I really started getting discouraged. I started thinking, gosh, is this ever going to happen for me? Did I make the right choice investing all this money in the school? How is this all going to work out? And so to your listeners, I would say, remember that and don't get discouraged, because there were definitely times like 6 or 8 months in where I was like, I give up. I'm going to go back to driving the truck. And I didn't, and it turned out to be the right choice. So I got that first paralegal job, and after 5 or 6 years, technology started becoming more and more important and relevant in the cases, and firms started building their own technology sort of capabilities. Mm-hmm. And because of the work I'd done as a paralegal, because of working overtime, on weekends, on doing trial support, and also demonstrating an interest in technology, I was given an opportunity to do litigation support, and I jumped at it. So during my time at Kroll, I progressed from a temp to a paralegal and finally to a litigation support professional.
So I want to give kudos to the person that gave you that opportunity, because promoting from within the firm, I get emails all the time about people trying to switch from paralegal or IT into lit support, and the manager's not willing to do it. So,
and she's still out there, and she's still mentoring people, to this day. And for me, that was kind of a clear roadmap of how I might operate once I got out there. In other words, a woman mentored me and gave me a chance, and then it occurred to me that, maybe I could do the same thing for others. So, and that became kind of a recurring theme over my career.
Okay, so you guys, for each job, we're going to talk about someone he may have mentored. But let's say hi to Wade first. Wade, do you know Wade?
I don't, not yet.
Wayne's pretty cool. And then Ankit saying hello. Ankit's staying up late in India. He's on my team at Case Point. So, so was there someone, and it's okay if there wasn't at every job, but was there someone in that time frame that you want to talk about that you mentored?
There really is. Part of that journey was doing trial work, and a lot of you guys are familiar with that. You go to a different city, set up a war room, set up all the technology, basically your case room and all of your case technology remote in the city where your trial's taking place. So I ended up doing that a lot later in my paralegal career, and even when I was a lit support guy. In the late 90s, we hired a temp. It was a case in Wilmington, Delaware, in federal court there, and we hired this temp, and his sort of history was very similar to mine, where he had gone to paralegal school and couldn't find a job, and finally we hired him as a temp. And at first this guy didn't integrate with the team very well, but he did one thing better than just about anybody else, and that is he had a rock hard work ethic. We were working, and I'm not exaggerating, close to 20 hours a day for a number of days in a row. And for all of you guys that have done that, around the third or fourth day, you start getting a little bit delirious. And you're not always clear on what you've told people and what you've done and not done.
I call it loopy. You get loopy.
It's just part of human nature,
Yes.
And one thing, this young man really didn't seem to be seriously affected by staying up all day and all night for days on end, but also really kept a sense of humor, when things got really difficult. And boy, did that make a difference.
Yes, I totally agree.
So, I can't claim to have mentored this guy too much because he already had all these skills before he came in. Mm-hmm. But once it became clear he had those skills, when I went back to the firm, I told my boss, I told her, you have to hire this guy. You'll be very impressed with the amount of effort he puts in. And ultimately, at the urging of the attorneys I was working for, he did get hired. So, and I'm still in touch with him, and he's still working as a paralegal here in Washington. So.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so Meryl is commenting on, and this is a good point, Meryl. She had to actually switch firms to get the opportunity because even though there was a need where she was. So, and that happens.
Well, that's a great point. I actually even have that kind of in the outline of things I want to talk about. Okay. Because my next job is, I moved to Steptoe & Johnson to be the litigation support manager. But at Kroll & Moring, I kind of had earned the reputation as a paralegal. And jumping to the next level of a litigation support person or even an associate attorney is really difficult within the confines of one firm because you kind of just get labeled as the paralegal guy. Or he's the technology paralegal. He's good at it, but he's not an attorney So, folks, you really do sometimes have to jump firms to get to that next level. And another sort of related topic is sometimes it pays to go down to a smaller firm. If you're a paralegal at a giant firm and you're really into the technology and you know it, Well, a smaller 10 or 12 attorney firm might be happy to make you their lit support manager and give you that skill for your resume and help you move to the next level. So, I could have easily stayed at Crowell & Moring for my whole career. I worked with, really classy and really thoughtful people, and some of them are still there. And I was lucky to do that. But moving was really important to moving to the next level. And the other thing I should point out is that different partners at Crowell & Moring played a key role in me getting the job at Steptoe & Johnson.
Really?
At one person in particular, his wife was a partner at Steptoe, and he called over and said, "You got to give this guy a chance." And I didn't know about that till after the fact, but I'm pretty sure it played a big role. And
that's awesome.
And that's another example of mentoring helping me along my way, where I benefited from it.
Yep. So Meryl's agreeing, and Reth is in the house. Reth is saying hi. I don't know if you know Reth either.
Not yet, but
I'm just curious. I mean, I know we have a lot of overlap, and I know you've been in different cities, and a lot of these people are in different cities. Okay,
yes.
So you landed at Steptoe & Johnson, which is another law firm, and they're comparable in size, Crowell & Moring and Steptoe, I believe.
Yeah, probably Steptoe. I mean, Crowell's maybe a little bigger,
Okay.
At least back in those days. And
So was
Steptoe,
there anyone you ended up mentoring in your time at Steptoe?
yeah, I would say so. I had made friends with a person that was an IT support desk guy, and he was interested in learning about the technology I was working on, but also in networking generally. And the way I mentored him was pretty interesting. It was a little bit outside of the lit support arena.
So you said, let me stop you. You said networking in general. Networking people or networking IT?
IT networking, like, the nuts and bolts of how data packets move from place A to place B.
Okay.
And he had been dating this woman that he was deeply in love with, and she got accepted to LSU. And he said, Ken, should I go down there and be with her? Because it would delay his career to some degree. And I told him, things like love only come up every once in a while. You're always going to be able to work on your career. Why not go for it? You don't know how it's going to work out. It might not work out. But if you don't try, you're always going to be wondering, what if? And long story short, it worked out. And I'm still in contact with him, and he ended up having a fantastic career in network security. So
that's awesome. And so found love, and he followed the girl, basically.
So the takeaway from that adventure was to follow your heart. That a lot of times it points you in the right direction, even if it doesn't seem logically the thing to do at that particular moment. That was the takeaway from that experience.
Cool.
I'm trying to live up to that now.
Okay, so then you went to the dark side, doing air quotes.
Yeah.
I don't. You probably told me back when, but how did you end up getting that opportunity to go work at Capital Legal, which you guys has a new name now, but we're going to keep calling it Capital Legal because that's what it was at the time.
Sure. The same company's still out there. It's called Capital Novus now. Still in touch with people. In fact, I was talking to some people just the other day from there. I knew the owner of the company, who's a friend of both of ours. Mm-hmm. And I had been giving him, smallish projects at the various firms I worked at to kind of give his company a jump start and see what they could do technology-wise. And after a while, I started realizing that this company has huge potential. And then in a lot of ways, they were different than many of the vendors that existed at that time. This is kind of in the 2004 timeframe, and e-discovery existed, but it was kind of in its nascent stages, I would say.
Yeah, definitely.
And a lot of the vendors were paper scanners that, had bought some software and were continuing with that sort of same business model, only with electronic files. And there's not anything wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But this other company had taken kind of a different approach, that they weren't really super interested in doing paper. And they applied a really customizable approach to the content that I think still matters today. That there's so much different types of data out there that one tool or one approach can handicap you in a lot of ways. And so in having discussions like that and getting to know the owner, I eventually was offered a job, and it was kind of a leap of faith for me because, I loved working at the law firms, and I loved the cases that we worked on. At Steptoe, we worked on some pretty high-profile cases, things that you might read about in the newspaper. And by golly, Madeline Albright had an office down the hall, so I would see her in the cafeteria from time to time, which was pretty awesome. And she's really into mentoring too, by the way. You might look at some of her content. But I took the leap and joined the vendor side.
So it just so happens that that's where we worked together initially. I had made a jump to Mayor Brown, and they did not have a lot of e-discovery experience at that point in time. I was hired as lit support manager, and we ended up getting what was their second request. For me, it was like my fifth or sixth second request. Coming from Piper, but for them it was a huge deal, second request, and I had also been impressed with Capital Legal Services, but it was a combination of going somewhere that I trusted, and also knowing that you were there, and you and I ended up talking every single day. And when I tell my students this story, I always talk about the fact that we had literally 75 hard drives coming from the client, getting to me giving it to you. I would make you, one of my rules is that you copy the data before you give it to the service provider, so that you never have your only copy going somewhere, right?
Which is great practice even today.
But we couldn't, at the speed we had to do things and at the volume of these hard drives coming in. I literally talked to you and I was like, okay, you're going to send a guy, and a guy's going to pick it up, and he's going to take it right back to you. Hopefully he doesn't get in a car accident, on the way. And then please copy the data and send it right back to me so I have peace of mind that it's back in my, firm. I don't know if you remember that, but it was very adamant about it.
I do remember that. I also remember driving my pickup truck over to Office Depot and just loading it with hard drives. So that was an adventure.
Oh,
so
wow,
you sure you want?
Okay.
You sure you want 200?
Somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, I asked the guy at the store about the drives, and I said, sure, I'd like 200 of them, please. Okay.
But the other cool thing I remember about that time is you and I were working together on this case, but also I had 8 attorneys come over from Crowell and Mooring, and they brought a terabyte of concordance data with them. And it wasn't, like, I got it in sort of a raw format. So it had been a lot of data over a period of time. It's one of those things where you inherit a case and you really don't like that. But anyways, I didn't have time to do the second request and mangle all that data into our concordance instance, So I was venting to you and worrying to you, and you said, Amy, let me tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you one of my engineers, I think you called him. And
yep.
I'm going to send you an engineer. And I said, what? You're going to do what? You're like, you can borrow him. I'm like, I can borrow someone from your... And so that was the beginning of you sending me Viren, which I want to mention because years later I'm still in touch with him. He sat literally, I had a bigger size office and I had a workstation along one wall. I put him there and he just did his database stuff, and access and stuff. He just cleaned up all that data and transferred it into Mayor Brown's environment. But also I got to know him. And years later, one of his friends was Vishal, and I now work with Vishal. So, and also Viren's wife, I don't know if you know this, but Viren's wife, Snehal, works like side by side with my husband.
I knew her. I didn't realize she was working with Cal.
Yeah. Yep. So small world.
It's a small world, and I remember when Vishal started at Capital Legal Solutions, we had a data restoration project. Hey, Jennifer. we had a data restoration project. Vishal had just started with us, and he stayed up all night, probably for 2 days straight, trying to figure out how to restore these somewhat obscure backup files that we had. And he did figure it out eventually, and we got the data. But that was my first interaction with Vishal, who was willing to do just about anything to get access to this data and never gave up. So I really appreciated that. And it was an example for a lot of our coworkers too about what could be done, you know.
Yeah.
And it's obviously servicing him well in his current career.
Yep. He's now the CTO or product, engineer or whatever we're calling him. Product officer, I think his new title is. But anyways, he's the guy who built CasePoint. So was there somebody you mentored at CLS during that time frame?
Well, I would say yes. As you can tell from the names, a lot of the people were from Southeast Asia at that company, and hadn't seen a lot of the world outside of, either where they went to college or working at CLS, as we called it. And so I would say there wasn't a single person I mentored there, but in a lot of ways, I were their eyes and ears towards the outside world, where when I was interacting with them on a social basis, they would say, "Hey, Ken, what's it like to work at a law firm? Like, what do you need to do that? How much do they pay?" And so I would encourage them. Well, actually, you just need technical skills and contacts, and gee, I can help you with the latter, and you clearly have the former. So, really, for a lot of my teammates and coworkers, I was able to point out that there are a ton of other jobs in this industry, in unrelated industries, and your skills translate to so many different things that you're a really valuable potential employee. So in that sense, there were multiple people that I mentored. And so many of those folks have gone on, we've just mentioned a couple of them here.
Greg comes to mind.
Greg was one of my teammates there, and he's had a fantastic career. Greg was already there and didn't really require any mentoring from me, but as I said, he was a great teammate.
Yeah.
But the younger people, have really, we crossed paths with them all the time. They've really gone on to great careers and raised families and all those things with the skills that they developed from that time. So that was a great experience.
Timely. Greg! Sending regards to Ken, many memories. I knew that, because Greg and I are close too, so I knew that Greg thinks fondly of you. So it was pretty cool that he is here today.
Such a classy guy. Such a really, so focused on his family and his kids. That was something that was another form of mentoring, because you can do great at your job and still make a strong effort with your family, and Greg was a good example of that.
He's an excellent example of that. He's a really good dad. I don't know what this means, but he's mentioning a name.
Oh, it's Danesh Imran, who was one of our teammates, and just someone I think Greg and I both hold very dear to our hearts. And Danesh is still in this business.
I think he liked it, your LinkedIn post.
Yeah, he did.
He's at, he's at a law firm, right?
I think he's up in New York at a firm, if I'm not mistaken.
Cool.
But
yeah, sounds like somebody I should meet. Okay, so let's move on.
That's right.
Then I remember meeting you. We always would meet for coffee or, a meal or something. And I remember meeting you during this time frame, and you were like, "I have a dream." So talk about what you did next.
I helped start a company. I had an idea that, wow, there's an unfilled need in the marketplace, and part of that was a result of yours and my interaction, that I had this vision of a really high-end boutique litigation support provider where we had really top-notch engineers and we gave really hands-on service to the clients, and we wouldn't just take the cases where it was easy mail processing, spit it in, press the button, spit it out, where we would deal with much more challenging data problems and content. And so that was my dream, and tried to achieve it.
Okay. So do you have a takeaway from that time frame?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that was a great learning experience. It would probably take, all day to list all the things I learned from there. But one thing that keeps coming back to me is, for each of us, I think the most valuable asset we have is our time. They're not going to make any more of it. And so manage.
Keep hoping you'll figure out a way to add more time.
Well, I'm working on my flux capacitor on weekends, and it's not quite ready yet, but I'm only up to 1.1 gigawatts in terms of my current production. But until they do that, and I think many of us will be shocked if they do succeed at that, manage your time very carefully, and in everything, in your personal life, in your work life, how you do your work tasks, and be really careful about who you spend your time with. Don't spend your time with people that aren't worthy of it. So that was a big takeaway from that experience.
Okay, and I know the answer to this question. You mentored somebody there too, right? I think I know who.
Yeah. Well, there were probably multiples, and you definitely know at least one of them.
Okay.
And that ended up being one of the most rewarding parts of it. There were 4 young men that, all men in this case, that worked with us, that we are still in touch with now, that ended up having great careers in this industry.
And weren't they newbies? Like, didn't you hire some newbies and bring them into this industry?
Absolutely. One guy, I can't say was a total newbie. He was doing desktop support at a law firm in Alexandria. Okay. But, the job we gave him was a big jump from that and had a lot bigger responsibilities, which he completely stepped up on and handled. And I'm thankful for that, even to this day. And there was another guy that was an old acquaintance of mine, an old friend, a dear friend actually, that had hit really hard times. His wife had passed away, and we gave him a job just crunching data, and he ended up turning that into a career. He's now working for the DOJ, and that worked out great. And there's 2 other examples. I don't want to, but you guys know who you are, and I still think about you all the time. So that was a great outcome from that adventure. That those people were able to really take advantage of that opportunity. And one other thing I should really say about it, I had made clear to each of them that I was trying to mentor them, and that all I really wanted in return was for them to mentor others if they had the opportunity. And I have seen a number of them make strong efforts to do that for other human beings.
Yeah, I'm just going to say one name, James. James literally took that to heart. He definitely intentionally mentors people.
He does, and he's really good at it.
He is good at it, yeah.
So
I ended up recommending him to take someone's place in the paralegal program as a professor. He's awesome.
He's really passionate about teaching too, and that's one of his strengths. And I'm not responsible for any of that. Those were all skills he had before I crossed paths with him. I had a little will to do in saying, you have the skill, you should capitalize on it. But he would have anyways, and he is now, So that makes it really rewarding.
I'm hoping to get him on the show because he's just so inspirational.
If you do, I'll send a lot of really obnoxious comments.
Okay, so then you went to a different service provider, and that was your big change from doing generic lit support, we'll call it, to specifically niching down to forensics, correct?
That's right. My current career is focused really entirely on computer forensics, and after I left that company, I was given an opportunity at another company where they let me just start a forensics department. And the other thing that they did that was really helpful and really kind was they let me bring my teammates from the prior company. Yeah. So I actually brought at least 2 people with me, and they let us start a forensics group. So, which was something we were planning on doing on the company I had started, but it really didn't work out. but and I had done forensic work and played around with forensics applications before that, but this is the first time where that was going to be all I did.
Yep.
I consulted with people about their litigation tasks, but really worked on forensic investigations. So that was also another great opportunity.
Okay. We'll interject with Greg. What a great walk down memory lane. Yeah, it is, Greg. I agree. While I left the industry for greener pastures, you both were a big part of my career in the industry. Signing off from Orlando, Florida, heading back to D.C. He does a lot of traveling now. But thank you, Greg, for popping in and saying hi.
Safe travels. I feel the same way. I mean, those days were challenging. The company probably was a startup, I think, in a lot of ways, and we hustled like it was a startup, and it built the level of camaraderie and that remains today, many years later.
Yep. Okay, so what was it like starting a forensic department? What did you enjoy most about that job?
Well, what I enjoyed most about it was really the same thing that I enjoy about it now, and that is that there's so much to learn.
Each case is different, you mean?
Each case is different, and the technology changes weekly, and the tools are changing all the time. So to be effective, you have to be learning constantly. Okay. And that's not really that different than litigation support, but in my current field, it's even more noticeable because you're going to be testifying about the work you do, and it turns out the people that are cross-examining you are quite smart and also have people that know technology, so you really got to cross your T's and dot your I's, and that comes back to learning and knowledge. And I read this awesome thing on LinkedIn the other day where a woman said your job pays you twice. It pays you once on your paycheck, and the second payment are the skills that you learn. That's right. And she also said, if you're not getting that second paycheck, it's time to start, taking stock of things. Now,
totally. I totally agree with that.
Not everyone's in a position to just drop their job. We all have families and, have to pay the rent. But, that can be a process where you realize I'm not learning at my current job. What's a path for me to follow where I could be learning new things?
Some people that I mentor, they come to me with the exact thing. I don't know how to learn where I am now, and I can actually help with that. I can guide them down, give them ideas for where they can learn. Because when you have a full-time job and it's stable, that's the best time to devote some time to learning. Some people just don't know where to start.
It's true, and I think also just having a little bit of savings. When I finally got my full-time job, I was able to establish some savings, and that gave me flexibility to move when I had to or if I had to, and also a little bit of peace of mind. So those are kind of two things that I took away from that phase in life.
All right, so let's move on to the next position, which I thought was interesting when you did it. I wasn't quite sure where that was going, so I'm going to probably hear stuff today that I haven't heard before. So you went back to CLS.
I went back to CLS. I was socializing with the company's owner, who I'll name, Dharmesh Shingawa. Hi, Dharmesh. And I kept explaining to him that I was unemployed, and he thought I was teasing him. and finally, about the third or fourth time, he realized I was serious, and he said, "Hey, why don't you come back and work for us again? I mean, we're doing really well, but we could use a little bit of an energy injection, and I want you on the team." And I didn't hesitate because I was, you heard us talking about, Greg and I, talking about what it was like the first time around and how much we loved it. So I didn't even hesitate. I went back there and I did computer forensics for him. I did collections.
Back in a completely different role.
Completely different role, but I was thankful for that opportunity and also all the support I got from my teammates there.
Yeah. Okay, so you were director of forensics, I think, at that one,
sure,
after having been forensics on the at another company. So do you want to stop and talk about anybody you mentored during that time frame?
There were a few. There was one person that was really not a technologist at all, who was actually a marketing person that was quite a bit younger than me, fresh out of college, And I recalled when I first started working at Crowell & Mooring, and an older paralegal, someone who was about 10 years older than me, kind of took me under his wings and was like, look, here's how things work here. He explained to me about the overtime, about the 401k program, about how important it was to start in the 401k program, and how every Friday there were emails for overtime and weekend work, and that if I was smart, I should take advantage of those because it was time and a half.
That's cool.
And yeah, it was good mentoring.
Person who doesn't really know exactly. Yeah.
And what did I have going on Saturday morning? Like sleeping or watching cartoons. So it turns out I could actually get paid for that time. And so I basically gave that young man the same advice. Sign up for the 401k. If you have a chance to do some overtime or extra work, do it. Oh, look, the company's offering free training on this technology. Don't skip that. Free knowledge is so valuable.
Yeah.
B.B. King said one time that the great thing about knowledge is nobody can ever take it away from you.
That's true.
And so I always think about that. And, you know, when you get chances for free learning, training on software or a demo on software, take it.
Or even shadowing somebody, you know, just being able, that's what I encourage when people are emailing me, like, see if you can, and I teach them how to shadow, because, you know, the best part of shadowing is to keep your mouth shut, you know, so, and, you know, go in and ask somebody kindly if you can just sit with them, you know, and monitor what they're doing. And if nobody has time to teach you, that's okay. Just soak it up by being there. And if as long as you respect their time and don't interrupt what they're trying to do, especially if they're talking to an attorney, then they will let you do it again, you know, if you honor that.
Well, I think sort of a willingness and a desire to help others is an innate human quality.
I agree.
And if you just say to folks, hey, I'm trying to work my way up at this company, can I try to learn what you're doing? I think you'd be really surprised at, you know, people's response.
Well, I get a lot of emails where they get a no to that question. Breaks my heart.
And that's going to happen, but, you know, no path is a straight one, right? So there's going to be people that are jealous of their job, or they don't want you taking it over, or, right? And that's fine. You know, you'll find someone else. You'll find another way. There's no reason to resent that, or that's based on their own insecurities. Yeah. The only thing I can say about that is try not to use that as your model when you end up wherever you're going. You're going to be good enough where you don't have to worry about it. So
that's good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you eventually had another opportunity to move to a different company, and that's where you are now.
That's where I am now.
I've been there for 4.5 years, something like that.
I'd say 4 years at this point. It's a super interesting job, computer forensic investigating, all kinds of interesting cases, all kinds of interesting technology. You never know what's going to come across your desk. And I learn something new every week, and that's what makes me like my job. Just constant learning. Yeah.
Okay. But you're doing something, you're working at iDiscovery Solutions now, and one of their things you were telling me earlier this week is they do a lot of expert testimony. And it's something that when I teach newbies, I tell them, don't be that person that collects the data unless you also can be that person that can, you know, be a witness and testify about it. And if that's not your bailiwick, then don't go there, you know, because as you alluded to earlier, there are smart people asking you questions and you have to know what you're talking about. And so what's it like? I mean, I'm asking you because we haven't talked recently. What's it like being a witness? Like, that sounds intense to me.
Well, it can be, but really, you're just there to tell the truth. You know, you're really just explaining to the court what you've observed. You first tell them your experience, and you get qualified as an expert. But then when it comes down to the evidence, you describe the evidence, and as an expert, your job is to tell the court things that a lay person couldn't. So you're not there to testify about, oh, it was 12:30 on Tuesday when this happened. I mean, you can testify about that if there's some evidence or you've done some analysis that uncovers facts around that. But really, you're there to explain the technological basis for certain findings in a way that's understandable to the trier of fact. So, and really that means you have to tell them things they don't already know. It could be explaining what an IP address is, or what a link file is on a Windows computer, or what type of logs exist in OS X. Things that they, as a lawyer or a judge or even a member of a jury wouldn't know in their day-to-day jobs. And it always is helpful to tie it back to analogies that people understand from their day-to-day life. Like, one that comes up all the time is that Windows have an artifact called an MFT, or master file table, and I've heard other experts describe it as sort of like the card catalog in the library, where there's a listing for each file and it tells you where to find that file. And that's an analogy that resonates with people, because most
from the 80s. Do you have a better one?
Yeah, a better one now. It's sort of like the index on YouTube where you can find all your videos. Maybe that's another one. But
I thought you were going to say that that's what people used to say, and then you say something different now. So you actually use the same card catalog?
I really do, because it's a great analogy for the MFT. It's literally just a record that points you to what you want to find.
Okay. Do you have a better example to put you on the spot of an analogy that you thought up that you see resonates with people nodding their heads?
An analogy that I thought of, well, most of my analogies I've stolen from my teammates and coworkers, but sitting right here, right now, we had a case where we talked about an artifact called a volume shadow copy, and I explained it to the person that I was talking to as, think of it as your security camera taking a picture of certain items in your house not all of them, but certain ones at a snapshot in time.
Okay.
So that's not a great analogy,
but it's good. It's easy to understand. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Cool.
So, yeah.
So I think you already answered what you enjoy most about that job, because you said you're always learning, it's always changing, and that's one thing I tell my students, that litigation support is so dynamic. Every case is different, even if it's for the same client, and I like that. I think it's one of the cool things about the job. So mentoring, have you mentored anybody, or are you currently mentoring anybody since you've been there?
I am. One of my really good friends is a vice commander at a VFW post near me, and I've been honored to meet a lot of the young people at that post, young people that have endured some pretty challenging circumstances, and strangely, they look up to some degree to my friend, who's a bit older than me because he's vice commander of the post. And we've been fortunate to really be able to come up, provide some examples to these young people, like, hey, I know you're struggling in your career right now, but we both struggled a lot harder than that, and things are going to work out. Like, that's something that would have been really helpful for me to hear back in 1992. Don't give up, it's going to work out. So we encourage people, hey, get job training, like learn a trade. Don't just punch the clock. Learn a valuable trade. Learn how to weld. Learn to be an electrician. Go to college at night. Whatever it is, keep learning new things and don't give up, because it's going to work out eventually. Eventually, you're going to find your niche. You're going to find something that you love and that you're probably better at than most people, and that's going to work out. So don't give up. I mean, that's really the best advice that we're sharing with people right now.
Yeah, I know James is, he also used to work at IDS, and he had a couple of his employees come to the Georgetown program, and because he's always encouraging them to learn as well, so it was pretty fun.
Yeah, I mean,
somebody you work with who, I don't know if he's there anymore, but he came as a guest speaker.
Yeah, I think he still is here.
Yeah, so that was kind of fun too. Just, I your attitude is amazing. So you guys, if you have any questions, we're going to be winding down. So there's a delay, Ken, in the questions. So sometimes they come in after I've already signed off. So if you have any questions or comments, or you want to tell Ken anything, now's the time, you guys. I guess two things. One is related to you, and one is not. But for you, I wanted to take an opportunity to thank you, and hopefully I won't start crying. But just throughout my career, I've had a really good career. I'm very blessed to have been able to go from one job to another based on recommendations. People picking up the phone and calling me saying, "Come work here." But there were struggles in some of those jobs, and you and I would meet for any coffee or a meal or whatever, and we had the best conversations. Like the way that hopefully people saw today that you articulate, it gels well with me, and you always give me the best advice, and I'm very thankful for having you as a friend.
I am also thankful, and I'm thankful to be on the show and that we cross paths. I've yet to meet another human being that got where they were going entirely by themselves, and being reminded of the fact that we're interdependent and that we can help each other, I think is helpful.
Point, though, because one thing I'm always telling people that I'm mentoring, and even every time I give a speaking engagement, take initiative. You've said it several times in different ways without saying that word today, but taking initiative, like stop sitting there complaining about your situation and take initiative to learn that next thing. Or even with my Fast Tip Fridays, they're short videos, and I would tell people, I know you don't have time to learn technology because you're busy doing your job, but you do have time to sit there for a 2 to 3 minute video to learn something that's going to make you shine in your role with your legal team. So take initiative is my point.
Nothing cures anxiety like action.
Well said.
So if you're worried or you're nervous about what's going to happen, take action.
Okay, so the last thing I have for you guys, I don't see any comments coming in, but usually when it gets quiet in the comments, it means they're just soaking up what I'm saying. What you said today. But I do want to take an opportunity to let you guys know that CasePoint is looking for a DBA, and they're looking for, it doesn't have to be, a specific software, but they're looking for somebody that is really good, a good person, but also really skilled at manipulating data. And they're willing to have the person be remote. They don't have to be, because we're in Tysons, Virginia. So if you know somebody or you are somebody, I can't speak highly enough about the company and the culture of CasePoint. It's a wonderful company to work for. Okay, so Meryl is saying, great information, inspirational words, soaking it in. That's what I thought. Thank you, Meryl. Okay, so Ken, I wanted to thank you for saying yes when I asked you. And now we both have this resource to send people to. Sylvia, definitely where we watched to soak it all in. Great conversation. Sylvia works with me at CasePoint. And Wade, thanks Ken and thanks Amy for bringing him to us. A great conversation. Wade's going to be on in a couple weeks, you guys. Okay, so thank you, Ken, for saying yes, and I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you, guys.
You're very welcome.
Take care. Have a good weekend, you guys. See you next week.